What a heartbreaking loss for Kansas State at home.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Now the number one sports podcast network out there. Welcome back to my everydayers. We are diving in to Kansas State's women's basketball falling 72-71 to South Dakota at home. This was a really tough game for Jeff Mittie and his brand new crew. This was kind of a wake-up call, maybe a gut check if you want. Things just didn't go right for them, with the exception of maybe the charity strike. Other than that, this was a really tough game for this new team, and we're going to break it down and talk about all the things that you can hope to see improvements on. And this is basically the new test. And what we were kind of saying in the offseason, the idea of being patient. This is what exactly we're going to get with this Kansas State roster. This is a South Dakota team that last year was 11-20 in their record. And they started off, they came 3-0 to Manhattan, and they're leaving 4-0 with a 72-71 win. This is easily one of their biggest wins in a very long time, probably since a few years ago when they made their Sweet 16 run and they beat Baylor in Waco to do that. So they have some success against Big 12 teams, and unfortunately Kansas State is on the wrong side of that one as well. The first things that come to my mind here, we're going to break it down. I got some notes when I took during the game, and then just really my instant reactions as well. I did not wait around to record this for hearing from Jeff Mittie, so whatever we get from him after the game, we'll talk about that this weekend, or when we get ready to prepare for the game on Sunday against Texas Tech. We're going to talk about that portion at the end of this episode. But overall, the starting five, Taryn Sides was not in the starting five. That was an initial surprise for me. From what I've seen and what I've gathered, that was not for any disciplinary reasons or performance reasons. It was more for just trying to get more of an identity and more of maybe a difference just out on the court to start the game, giving a freshman a taste of that experiment, the experience, I should say, and with Foy taking the starting job over Sides. Now, Sides did start the second half instead of Foy, so I do think it was just kind of giving Foy the nod to say, hey, we're going to start you in this one. It's a non-conference matchup. And I don't think it was a huge thing, but I will say initially, right off the bat, I was certainly surprised that Taryn Sides didn't start in this game. Overall, this was a pretty struggling game for Kansas State. And I think that was the biggest thing that I took from this. They struggled mightily from the floor, especially in the first quarter. They struggled defensively. They were really bad in transition, especially stopping the three-point shot the entire game. And that's eventually what actually led them to their demise with the final shot, with South Dakota taking the lead with seconds left, 1.6 seconds, I believe, after draining a three to take that 1-point lead. And they struggled just stopping the three. The South Dakota did a really good job moving the ball around and finding that open shooter, and Kansas State wasn't fast enough on that portion. I know Jeff Mittie is going to really be working on that, because you could see the frustration multiple times building up on the sidelines of Jeff Mittie, multiple times where he called 2 quick timeouts because he didn't like things. I mean, one possession after the other, he called fast timeouts because he wanted to make sure Kansas State was in the right, and they still really couldn't get things going in a flow. So there's a lot of good things I still think you can take from this game, but of course, a lot of improvements when you're losing to a South Dakota team who looks mightily improved. And maybe we look back at this game and we see South Dakota being a Cinderella team of women's basketball this year. I mean, that could certainly happen. They were a good basketball team, and they didn't even play their best, but I think they have a lot in their tank as well. Some good bench players, some good role players. They can really shoot the three ball. They can move the ball. They can play some good defense. They have some good freshmen on their roster. So maybe we see the South Dakota team in the tournament, and this loss doesn't look as bad as it does right now in the middle of November. The first thing I want to get to, probably Janessa Cotton. That was probably the first thing I want to get to today. She wound up fouling out later on in the game, and that became a huge issue. The officiating wasn't very good. And you could hear it in Bramlage. You could hear the crowd not being very happy with this one. And South Dakota picked up, I believe it was 6. I wrote down 5, but I think I missed one. I think there were 6 charges against Kansas State that South Dakota picked up against Kansas State. 6 offensive charges. towards Kansas State. And some of those obviously were in favor. And yeah, I think probably 2 of the 3 could probably make the argument that Kansas State was, aggressive and did deserve the charge. But one, especially towards the end of the game, especially the Janessa Cotton's final foul of the game was a charge, and it was just egregious. It was absolutely egregious, and it was tough, and I think that was a big reason why some of the momentum fell off for Kansas State towards the end of the game. But she had a great game. I thought she played good, with the exception of her foul trouble. I really enjoyed watching her, and obviously with Classens being out right now, she's with the Olympic team practicing. That's something that a lot of the international players are doing right now. So she's out this week. So Janessa Cotton had to step up. She had 9 points in her 23 minutes. She had 5 rebounds as well and 1 good block. She had 2 steals as well. And when she stepped up, I thought she did a good job. I thought the bigs did quite well for Kansas State in this one. And Ramia White was right there as well. And that's where I want to get to next with Cotton and White. White got 12 points. That's a career high for her in her 17 minutes coming off the bench. She was 3 for 4 from the field. She had 4 rebounds. I thought she played great. Now, there was some turnovers from both Cotton and White that could be cleaned up. I think between them both, they had 7 turnovers, 4 from Cotton and 3 from White. But overall, I thought with the missing of Classens and having those 2 in there is definitely, I thought, was okay. I mean, especially with White getting a career high, that's plus. That's a plus side. I don't think you're expecting to get that much from White with having Classens coming in. Obviously, you're bringing in other international talent that's going to get here in December as well. So I think this team's going to be a lot deeper. And if you're getting this from what is most likely going to turn into a role player coming deep off your bench later on when we get to Big 12 play, I think that's huge. So I think there's still a lot of good things to take from this game. It just obviously didn't work in favor of Kansas State. The biggest reason that they let South Dakota stay in this one is because they were terrible, especially in the first and second quarter from the field, shooting from the field. In the first quarter, I mean, I think they were down by 1. They trailed by 1 at the end of the first quarter, 16-15. 9 of their 15 points came from the free throw line. They started the game 0 for 6 before they got their first bucket of the game from the field, and it was a Janessa Cotton bucket. And that got them to 1 for 7 to start off the game. They finished the first quarter 3 for 12 from the field, 25% from the field. And then if you want to just go for an entire team stat, it didn't get much better. They were 18 for 47 across the entire game, 38.3%. Now, that's not much worse than what South Dakota did, but they had such a slower start in the first half, and they did kind of carry it back and get a third quarter lead, but it just wasn't enough to get away from South Dakota, and they let them stick around, and eventually that turned into their demise, as we mentioned. Taryn Sides, although didn't start this game, I thought she stepped up and played good. Gina Garcia, Tess Heel, all of those guards played a very valuable role. And Jordan Spicer, although her shooting hasn't been the greatest to start the season, had a huge 3-point shot to keep this one close towards the end of the game. So you're starting to get some of this momentum starting to shift for Kansas State. Although you get this loss, you can see the path. You can see the future. And those players I just mentioned, we're going to talk about them on the other side of this one right here on this reaction show of Kansas State following the South Dakota for the first loss of the season, moving to 3-1 after the loss, 72-71. We'll be right back right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or want to ride that hot hand, well, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into that same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And unfortunately for Kansas State, it was the other way around, but maybe somebody in FanDuel got lucky with that one this evening. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen of the day. Now the #1 sports podcast network. Really appreciate that. Your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And we're diving into Kansas State falling to South Dakota 72-71, buy-in game at home in Manhattan. Obviously doesn't feel good. But this is kind of the idea that we were expecting. I wasn't expecting us to lose a game to South Dakota. That's not what I'm really kind of getting at, but I'm getting at the entire big picture thing, that you're going from Sweet 16 Kansas State women's basketball of last year to this brand new program where you are purposely starting multiple freshmen for the first time in 3-4 years to kind of get this experience going before you get ready for Big 12 play. These are the kind of games, and it's not the best feeling in the world when you say this out loud, but if you listen to this show for any reason 2 months later and you go back and you're like, okay, these losses are the ones that actually build and move forward. These are because of such the lack of experience on this team. Tess Heel, the transfer coming into Kansas State, was the only player with starting experience on the entire roster before this season started. So getting some players in just to start one game, that experience, that changes the culture, that helps with the buy-in, that all that culture, you name it, the Jerome Tang buzzwords, you can use them in women's basketball as well. It's the same sport. So what I'm saying here is that the patience game is going to be absolutely real. But what we are seeing, though, is some of the leaders that obviously are going to be taking charge, like a Taryn Sides, did really well. 19 points. She was 6 for 9 from the field. She was 5 for 6 from the free throw land. I mean, she looked really good. She struggled initially. There was a couple times where she turned the ball over when she was looking to draw a foul, and instead it turned into a travel. Like, those things happened, but we saw those things happen in a younger Serena Sandell as well. We saw some of those things happen in multiple years of Kansas State basketball. So this type of progression is nothing new. And I think Taryn Sides is on the right path. And not only I think is she on the right path, I think this group, this talent, this roster, and this might not sound like the type that you're ready to hear after losing to a South Dakota team, a team that went 11-20 last year, which for the record, they're going to be much better than 11-20 that they were the year prior. They're on a really good step forward. They got some great freshmen over there as well. But this roster is a lot better than what I expected. I thought when we talked about the patience level this offseason, when I discussed that with you on this show, talking about this women's basketball team, when we were basically doing our preview to the season, when I meant patience, I meant that there was going to be some multiple moments where we were really struggling. And if this is what the pinnacle of that, then I think we're going to be okay. There's going to be some moments where we struggle in Big 12 play. It's going to happen. But I still think this team has what it takes to make it to the tournament this year. And if they can even be on the bubble in this first year under all these new players under Jeff Mittie, I think you're in a really good spot. Gina Garcia is turning into a player. I mean, she's turning into one of those players on the entire roster that's proving she's going to be a vital piece for this whole entire thing. And what really kind of seemed like she might just be a role player initially, when you kind of saw it in exhibition, you didn't really see much of her. She has really stepped up, especially over the last couple of weeks. And I personally don't even think it was her best game against South Dakota. And usually that's not the case if you wind up losing a basketball game like this. And she did miss the final shot of the game. She drove the lane. She tried to get one of those last second winners like she did against SMU just this past week, and it didn't work out with only 1 second to go. I mean, it's hard to really put any blame on that, and nor am I. But it wasn't her best game by any stretch of the imagination, but her defense is still strong. She's still running the point, and it's very impressive the way she runs the point too and runs plays. You can tell that she has, dare I say, already in the middle of November, she's only been with the program for a little bit. I think she has the complete trust of Jeff Mittie on this basketball team. And that is something huge to say for somebody young like Gina Garcia, who's already doing big things, moving from international play to Big 12 play. That's a huge step up. It is. You might not sound like it from the outside perspective, but if you're a college basketball fan, you know that there's a jump. Big 12 basketball is a difference. And I think she's doing a really good job. And I think she's going to turn into one of the star players on Kansas State's roster for hopefully years to come. I think she's done a really good job. Tess Heel is bringing in some good leadership as well. She's had some really good shots. I thought she played great tonight. There was a couple moments where obviously she had some issues as well, but I mean, really everybody did. There was a lot of team players that had turnovers. This Kansas State Wildcats team had 19 turnovers in the matchup, and Tess Heel only had 2 of them, but one was pretty catastrophic towards the end of the game. She passed one that almost was a South Dakota layup, but Gina Garcia stole it to kind of keep it in Kansas State's favor with seconds to go in the matchup, but she had 10 points in her 34 minutes. Her and Taryn Sides had the most minutes in the game. That's, again, shows you right there that Taryn Sides not starting the game really didn't matter. They each had 34 minutes. Gina Garcia had 33. Those were the three players that led with minutes. We had 9 players who played in this matchup. And when you're playing 9 players deep, and you probably would have played 10 players deep if you had Classens here, and in December, you're probably going to still probably play 10, maybe even go to 11, you have a really deep team that can produce. And there wasn't anybody out on the court in this one that you felt like when they were out there, they were a liability. And you can look at the box score. You might think that with Ania Foy, who was 0 for 4 from the field, didn't score in her 11 minutes, but she picked up a couple rebounds. Or you could think that with Isaiah Arenas, with her 15 minutes, she didn't score. She was 0 for 4 from the field, but she got an assist. She got a rebound. She found some ways to contribute, even if it wasn't from scoring. It wasn't the best shooting night for Kansas State, but they still continued to work. And I think that's really impressive moving forward. Jordan Spicer has been a player on this team that has struggled from shooting. If you want to talk about it, not just from this game, but the entire season so far, somebody who has been seen as this really stud freshman coming in, All-American, McDonald's type of player. Jordan Spicer obviously wasn't great. She was 1 for 6 from the field again tonight, still working to get that shooting on the right spot. But that only shot came with seconds to go. It was a huge 3-point shot for Jordan Spicer, and I really think that could help turn her around. And that's exactly what you need. Maybe you only need 1 or 2 of those shots just to feel right in either a game or just an entire season to move it around and get yourself out of that cold streak. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what she does next this coming weekend, starting Sunday. You talk about all these different starting rotations. If Jeff Mitty's looking for a confidence boost, maybe put Jordan in the starting lineup on Sunday against Texas Tech. That could be a huge and an interesting way to start off that Sunday's matchup. All right, I want to dig into this a little bit more to finish up this show. I want to talk about what we have coming this weekend and really some final thoughts on how you can get out of this funk and how you can make sure that this patience can turn into productivity, because there's going to be both. There's going to be a lot of P words here: productivity, patience, you name it. We got to find a way to improve. And that's what you need to do when you're talking Kansas State's women's basketball this year. We'll do that next right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. With over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. The real inventory and honest lead times keeps you from punting projects, while your industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, well, guess what? Supply House has next day delivery. Talk about an absolute game changer. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. So visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5, that's all one word, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. Kansas State falling to South Dakota 72-71, and they really struggled, especially in the first half, defending Josie Hill. And she had a really good game in this one, coming off the bench, and she's had a great game. She had 13 points. She was 4 for 8 from the field. She was 3 for 7 from three-point land. And overall, I think she was second leading on the team. Tori Schlagel had 15 points, but I feel like it was Josie Hill that really was the tough one for Kansas State in this matchup. Enough for me to put definitely a note down. And most of her points, I think all of her points, came in the first half. They found a way to change it up, though. Like, they got better in the second half, although that fourth quarter was pretty tough in the favor of South Dakota. I thought they played a really good third quarter. They outscored South Dakota 25-13, and that means you're getting good second half adjustments going into halftime. Jeff Mitty spoke on the broadcast, and he said, "No one's playing well or together. Our focus has been awful. Let's see if we can figure it out." So they found a way to regroup in that third quarter. It just didn't last until that final fourth quarter. So again, the adjustments are great. They just have to be prolonged and moving forward. Obviously, you want to talk about the bigs. You want to talk about trying to find a way to improve. I thought they did a good job in this one. I thought they didn't do a bad job whatsoever. They out-rebounded South Dakota 38-26. Jeff Mittie in the past talked about how he wants to see if his bigs can get tested and rebound better when they start playing better opponents in the size department. This is not one of those tests, but they did pass it either way with 38-26 on that one. The shooting is really the biggest thing here. You're 18 for 47, as I mentioned earlier, from the field, 3 for 15 from three-point land. That's huge for a team that is trying to create offense from the perimeter and then possibly look inside as a second option. It's very clear that's what that offense is trying to do. Try to create something, create space on the perimeter, look for an open three-point shot. If they make it, great, you move on, or you look for a second chance offensive rebound, something that they won on the battle again, 9-8 against South Dakota in offensive rebounds. But that they just weren't there when you were shooting 3 for 15. You had a really nice one from Jordan Spicer. You had a really good one from Terrence Sides with a nice sidestep in the fourth quarter as well. But other than that, you didn't have too many good three-point shots in the entire contest, going 20% in there. Getting to the free throw line, though, was not a problem. You were 32 for 39. 32 of your 71 points came from the charity strike, 82% from the free throw line, and getting there 40 times. That's great. And you're getting it from a lot of your guards, Tess Heel, Gina Garcia, driving the lane, getting fouls, put South Dakota in foul trouble pretty early. And I thought that was going to be an impact down the stretch. Surprisingly, it wasn't. That's really a tip of the cap to South Dakota, if I'm being completely honest. But that is a definitely something that you need to utilize for the entire season, because this season only gets longer, and the physicality, the bumps and bruises of these teams obviously start to show. If you can be that tougher team, that gritty team that's looking for an identity, because you're a brand new team, you're a team that's rebuilding. With the exception of Terrence Sides, really, you are a rebuilding team. So if you can find that identity as a gritty team that is looking to win these games no matter what it takes, whether it's down low, whether it's rebounding, shooting threes, going to the foul line 40 times a game, whatever the case, then count us in. I'm excited for that. So again, a lot of things to be excited about with this basketball game. If one shot doesn't go in, they win this one and it's a buzzer beater or right down to the minute, and we're talking about that, but we're still talking the exact same things about how we liked from the bigs, how we liked from Terrence Sides, Gina Garcia, Tess Heel, finally Jordan Spicer getting down a three-pointer. There's a lot of good things to take from this basketball game. It's just the overall message of, hey, let's keep it real. You got to shoot better, and especially from the three-point land as well. Coming up on Sunday, they take on Texas A&M. That'll be at 1 o'clock Central Time on ESPN+. And it is in Manhattan. If you are interested in going to that one, it should be a really good game. This will only be the third game of the season for Texas A&M. They played only 2 games so far this year, one against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, where they won 81-43, and against Tarleton State, where they won 79-64. This will be their first road trip, just like it was South Dakota's first road trip of the season, and this one will happen again on Sunday at 1 o'clock Central Time. Looking at the stats, just a quick kind of overview of Texas A&M. Nicera Pryor, the senior 5'3" guard out of Baltimore, Maryland, looks like the stud for Texas A&M. Currently, she is averaging 16 points a game, and she has 6 rebounds per game, 8 assists per game, 8 steals per game. So she is a stat stuffer. So that is huge, and that's something that obviously that you need to pay attention to moving in. Now that I look at that, it only shows that she has 1 game played on that, according to those ESPN stats. Maybe those aren't completely on board here. That looks a little weird. But either way, it looks like she is the top player to pay attention to either way. Regardless, insane. Texas A&M, again, 2-0 heading into Manhattan and looking for 3-0. Kansas State has to stop that losing streak, of course, so they can get back in the winning ways, because their non-conference schedule isn't a walk in the park. And I think that's something that is good for this team, because they need to be tested over and over again. Keep finding that identity. If they can find ways to test, just because they lost to a South Dakota team that went 11-20 last year, which again, they're not going to be that bad this year. I could see them being a dark horse bubble team, or maybe winning their conference and getting to the dance. I could see that happening in this South Dakota squad. But just because they lose to them at home in Manhattan by 1 point doesn't mean they don't stand a chance against currently number 11th ranked North Carolina. That comes at the end of the month. So overall, I do think there's some interesting games on the non-conference schedule that, of course, Kansas State's going to have to step up their performance to do so, shoot better to do so, and that starts all over again on Sunday against Texas A&M. We got more coming up on the channel. Obviously, we're going to break down the men's game that happened tonight. We're going to get that on the channel. That's probably going to come to you very early on Friday morning, and then we got to talk coordinators, what the football team, Matt Wells, Joe Clareman talked about getting ready for Oklahoma State. Got a couple episodes coming out for you on Friday, and of course my predictions for the game in Stillwater. So please like the video, please subscribe. We'll see you back here next time right here on Locked On Kansas State.